Hey, welcome back to another video from this YouTube channel Accounting Nerd. We wound up the previous video with a question. You must be familiar with the $1 billion scam which is involved by Vijay Mallya. The government of India is trying to recoup the loan amount taken by the Kingfisher Airlines, which is the company of Vijay Mallya, by selling the personal properties of Vijay Mallya. But if there is an unlimited liability status and the liabilities are limited to the business only, then how can someone sell the personal assets of Vijay Mallya and recoup the loan? If Kingfisher Airlines is a listed entity with the limited liability status, then how come Vijay Mallya, who is the founder, director, chairman of Kingfisher Airlines, be liable for the debts? How come banks and government chase down Vijay Mallya and seize his personal properties to recoup the loan amount? So in today's video, we're going to talk about corporate veil concept. In order to have a broader understanding of this concept, I have divided this video into 4 major parts. Separate legal entity concept, corporate veil concept, a summary of all the scams related to Vijay Mallya and Kingfisher Airlines, and finally, what is the role of corporate veil concept in Mallya's case? So without further ado, let's jump right in. A separate legal entity is like giving a business its own identity. So in the eyes of the laws, the business is an individual who is separate from the owners and shareholders. So it can enjoy all the benefits just like any individual does. So the business will be having its own legal rights, responsibilities and obligations. The business can buy assets, it can take loan from financial institutions, it can enter into contracts, it can sue and be sued, and many more things just like an individual. So from that, let me take you to another concept which is very related. It is called limited liability status. Let me explain this through an example. Imagine XYZ company approached a bank for a business loan. Like I told you before, the business can enter into contracts, take loans, buy assets, and it can do many things. So the bank verified all the details and approved the loan. So after many years, XYZ company went bankrupt, which means the XYZ company is not at all in a position to repay the bank amount. So in normal scenario, what can happen is the bank can seize all the properties which are in the names of XYZ company and sell it off to recover the loan amount. But the bank was unable to recover the full loan amount just by selling the assets which are in the name of XYZ company. So in that scenario, the bank cannot ask the shareholders to repay the debts. The shareholders might have invested some amount in the business in XYZ company. They will lose it. The bank can recover it. But beyond that, the bank cannot insist shareholders to pay off the debts. So this is called limited liability status. That is, the liabilities of the owners or shareholders is limited just to the amount that they have invested in XYZ company. Nothing beyond that. So the limited liability status and separate legal entity concept are closely related, but they are not exactly the same. Limited liability status can be considered as a subset of separate legal entity concept. But it is not necessary that all the businesses having a separate legal entity status should also have limited liability status as well. For example, in the case of general partnership, a general partnership is considered as a separate legal entity, but it does not have limited liability status. The partners will be having unlimited liability. There are many legal forms of businesses, and out of which mainly corporation and limited liability companies will be having a limited liability status. And also there are some limited liability partnerships in which some or all the partners will be having limited liability. If you want to know more about the legal forms of businesses, I have already made a video on that. You can check that out. Separate legal entity, limited liability status, corporate veil concept, all these concepts are closely related, but they are not exactly the same. The corporate veil is a metaphorical term which separates the actions and liabilities of a company from those of the owners and directors. Essentially, the company on one side of it and its shareholders and directors on the other side, and the liability does not pass through. But it doesn't mean that the owners and directors can do anything through the corporation, that they are always undercover. Essentially, the company is not a living thing. So whatever that is happening in a company, it's happening due to the actions of the shareholders and directors. So if any unlawful things happens, the real people behind that action should be brought to the limelight. In such scenarios, the corporate veil can be lifted by the courts if its presence would create a substantial injustice. This process is called lifting of corporate veil or piercing of corporate veil. The lifting of corporate veil can happen in many instances. For example, it has been found that the company is involving in some fraudulent activities like terrorism or money laundering, etc. Or it has been found that the company was created for improper purposes like tax evasion. Or when the company is being so dominated and controlled by the shareholders that the company itself becomes the alter ego of the directors or the shareholders. Or when the company fails to follow with the corporate formalities that they are supposed to comply with. So let's keep all of these in mind. while we are moving on to the next session of this video. Vijay Mallya was one of the most established businessmen in India. He started his career through the board of directors of UBL, United Breweries Limited, which was owned by his father. So once his father passed away, Mallya became the chairman of UBL. Mallya was infamous for his extravagant, lavish lifestyle. In 2005, Vijay Mallya entered into the aviation industry by creating a new company named Kingfisher Airlines. It was one of the most premium airlines in India at that time. Mallya was providing high-end luxurious features in the airlines. But aviation industry is one of the most risky industries in Indian market. The passengers will be looking at the fares rather than they look into the features and luxuries that is being provided by the airline companies. The Kingfisher Airlines was continuously running in losses. In 2007, they acquired another airline named Air Deccan, which was a budget airline, and they rebranded it as Kingfisher Red. And they both started to operate. But still, both of these airlines were in losses. But Vijay Mallya didn't stop there. He went on with these businesses by taking loan from a consortium of banks, which essentially means a group of banks, which was led by SBI, State Bank of India. And of course, again, airlines made losses and airline was unable to repay the debts. In 2012, Kingfisher Airlines was declared as a non-performing asset (NPA) by the banks. And in the same year, Kingfisher Airlines ceased all its operations. During 2013 to 2015, banks has filed cases against Vijay Mallya and the companies. Even ED, Enforcement Directorate, was also involved in this because of alleged financial irregularities against the company and Vijay Mallya. So finally in 2016, Vijay Mallya escaped to the UK. Since then, the Government of India and banks have been trying so hard for Vijay Mallya's extradition from the UK. Mallya is also fighting against the Government of India and banks. In 2018, Kingfisher Airlines got delisted from the Indian stock markets. This delisting happened because Kingfisher Airlines shares had remained suspended for more than 6 months due to the non-payment of dues and financial irregularities. Above all this, there were multiple allegations against Vijay Mallya, like he tried to divert the loan funds for his personal purposes through shell companies, loan defaults, and money laundering, etc. In 2018, the consortium of banks led by SBI filed an application with the Debt Recovery Tribunal (DRT) seeking to lift the corporate veil over Kingfisher Finvest, a holding company allegedly used by Mallya to divert funds. The DRT initially allowed the plea in 2018, implying Mallya could be held personally liable for Kingfisher Airlines debts. However, Kingfisher Finvest challenged this ruling in higher courts. The legal battle surrounding the lifting of corporate veil is ongoing, with appeals pending in various courts. No final decision has been made yet. With that being said, let me take you to the final part of this video. So you might be wondering that it seems the corporate veil has not been lifted yet. Then how come banks and Government of India chased down Vijay Mallya to seize his personal properties? There are two reasons for that. Number one, while taking loans, the banks were reluctant to give money to Kingfisher Airlines just because it was continuously making losses. So Vijay Mallya himself guaranteed that if Kingfisher Airlines is unable to pay off the debts, he himself will pay off the debts. Number two, since there were so much allegations against Vijay Mallya, like the misappropriation of assets, tax evasion, money laundering, and everything, ED, Enforcement Directorate, automatically came into play in light of some laws like PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Vijay Mallya and the Indian government with a lot of banks are still in legal battle. It's like a never-ending process. What actually ends here today is today's episode. If you like the content and presentation of this video, just give me a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. It will motivate me to make such videos in the future. Till we see again with another video, this is Counting Nerd signing off.